the Houston Texans requested an interview with former Saints head coach, Super Bowl 44 winner, Sean Payton. Payton has accepted the request. So it can't happen until January 17th since Payton is still considered an employee of the Saints. But I think that's the guy that got a ton out of his time in New Orleans, despite having a quarterback who I think had some limitations. And Breeze had a great career, but not the best shoulder. And I think you could tell that there was some compensation in the Saints offense with the amount of throws that were made to running backs. And I think Payton deserves a lot of credit for getting the most out of running backs as receivers. I also think that if you look at Payton's resume, like the Saints were always competitive. 7-9 is the worst they ever did. They did that 4 times. They had an 8-8 season. They were 9-8 Payton's last year. And the last couple of seasons when the Saints were at their best, I feel like they were a quarterback away from winning at least one more title in those seasons. That's a tough division to compete in, too, to be that good every single year. And I really was looking for an argument to say, no, the Houston Texans shouldn't trade for Sean Payton. I couldn't find it. Some people ask, what's the kind of compensation that you're looking for? Generally, when a head coach has been traded, Bill Belichick, John Gruden, there has been at least a first-round pick involved. I don't know if there's a more recent example of a head coach being traded than that, but it's probably going to take at least a first-round pick. That's the precedent. And we are talking about in Sean Payton, one of the better coaches that we've seen over the last 20 years. But I think about Bill Parcells when I think about Sean Payton. I think about what Bill Parcells did after a hiatus from football in 1991 to 1993, taking over the New England Patriots in 93. LSU Brian has a thought on the Texans head coaching search. 713-780-3776, 713-780-ESPN. What's going on, Brian?
Hey, guys. I wanted to give my opinion on Texans and Sean Payton. So it's a no-brainer, to be honest. And if you got to give up the 12th overall pick, then it's worth it. So I'm a Saints fan, and we know Sean enough to know Sean ain't going somewhere unless he's there for the long haul. So think if he's there the next 10, 15 years, he's a young guy. He'll be there the next 10, 15 years. And you're saying you not want to give up one first-round pick for one of the best, let's be honest, Sean's one of the best coaches in the league still.
I would agree.
And I hear a lot of people saying they want a young offensive innovator. You can't get better offensive innovator than Sean Payton. And Sean's young. Come on, he's going to be around for a while. This
59. I think you get at least 10 years of him, Brian, and appreciate the phone call. I think he would be here for 10 years, assuming, of course, things work out. I think that the Texans had the kind of checkbook that they could actually give Payton what he wants from a financial perspective. And the other thing is, too, that Brian laid out, like you're trading for something that you know is a commodity. I do think that we tend to overrate what a first-round draft pick is in terms of value. And a culture setter in Sean Payton is worth the 12th overall pick. Are you going to have to give up more than the 12th overall pick? That's the question. But you do have a ton of draft picks over the next couple of seasons thanks to the Deshaun Watson trade. And let's be honest, you're going to miss on some of those picks. Payton is as close, I think, to a guarantee as it gets as far as just bringing in somebody that is going to give you a return on your investment with that first overall pick. And to go a little bit further, if you're trying to return to relevance, Sean Payton brought the Saints out of the dark ages, much like Bill Parcells brought the Patriots out of the dark ages. I think that's what you're hoping for. And it's only been a couple of seasons where the Texans have been like this. It was a pretty damn good 2010s, from 2011. Yeah, there was a couple of bad seasons along the way, but from 2011 through the 2019 to 2020 season, there was a lot to say, yeah, this is good. But the last 3 years, they have gone so far back in time. You need somebody to change the culture. And you could roll the dice on a Ben Johnson. I like the possibilities with him. You could roll the dice on a Mike Kafka. I like those two candidates for the Texans. But Payton's a sure thing, or at least as close to one as you're getting with the head coach, and those two aren't. All of the candidates that there's a tight end coach, I guess, that they are interviewing from the Los Angeles Rams, Thomas Brown, who was added to the coaching search, and thus far in the coaching search, the Texans are going to interview Shane Steichen tomorrow. They're going to they interviewed, I guess, Ben Johnson today, Mike Kafka, D'Amico Ryans, but per Aaron Wilson, Ryans is not expected to pursue the job. Jonathan Gannon, who made a strong impression during his interview with the Texans last year. He's the defensive coordinator of the Eagles. Ejiro Evero, who accepted it. That interview is going to take place next week. Don't you feel a lot better about the idea of Sean Payton than you feel about the idea of anybody else? You should. You should. And I don't think you should be so much of a pick hoarder that you're unable to put a couple down to bring in a guy that you're hoping resets the culture. You need something like that. Could there be more fallout afterwards? Yeah, maybe Nick Caserio steps down, as he hinted during that press conference that he gave. Maybe he says, yeah, it's time for me to walk away. He said that he'd, I guess, be open to it. I don't know if he's actually open to it. He might not have a choice. I don't know that Payton's going to be opposed to working with Nick Caserio necessarily, though. I think that Caserio would love to have somebody that, at the very least, has a strong football background to go back and forth with. You know, I think that Caserio and Belichick had a pretty good relationship with one another, and I think Caserio is going to respect a Sean Payton where maybe he didn't respect a David Culley or a Lovie Smith. And I'm not talking about outward respect, but I mean, come on. There's a lot of us out there. If you're Nick Caserio, even if you are of the belief that Caserio shouldn't have any arrogance or cockiness, he did come from the Patriots. His perspective is his perspective. He has a clear idea of how he wants things done. I think Sean Payton is one of those guys who maybe has a different perspective on how to get things done, but it's definitely someone that Caserio would listen to as opposed to some of those other guys. So I don't think that relationship could not work. Payton as a personnel guy, I really don't know what to make of it. Mickey Loomis did a damn good job with the New Orleans Saints, an organization that I don't think is super cash rich over the past 15 to 20 years. So it's not like Payton's always been running the entire show. Is that something he needs? I don't know. But the Texans should definitely think about this.